Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I'm your faithful host, music journalist Thomas Mooney. For episode 173, I'm joined by West Virginia's John R. Miller. If you haven't heard of John, you're in store for a real treat with this one. Hell, even if you have, it still applies. Yesterday, John announced that his upcoming album, Depreciated, will be coming out July 16th. I just really love the title of that record, Depreciated. In conjunction, he released a new tune found on the album as well called Shenandoah Shakedown. It's a rich, vivid, dark, and haunting Appalachia epic. And really, that's how much of Depreciated plays out. It's rich and vivid storytelling that draws back to this dark and haunted, but beautiful and complex part of our country. It's rich and vivid instrumentation. That sonic palette, it just really glows this dark, organic green with moonlight fiddle, a touch of pedal steel, and some funk grooves that kick in when necessary. Also, Shenandoah Shakedown, it isn't the only song from Depreciated that's currently out. Back in March and April, John released Looking Over My Shoulder and Faustina. I'd highly encourage y'all to go check those out as well, and hopefully they will hold you over until mid-July when the album is fully released. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Sotol. If you've been listening to New Slang for really any amount of time, you'll know that Desert Door is one of my all-time favorite premium, high-quality spirits. If you haven't or aren't sure what exactly a Sotol is, I'm going to let you in on a little secret that's going to up the game on your liquor cabinet. For starters, the best reference point that I can point you to is to think about a tequila or a mezcal. Do you feel that Western desert, that Texas ruggedness? Okay, Sotol is like that, but a little bit more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It intrigues the palate and offers these hints of vanilla and citrus. There's an earthiness that often sends me right back to my Trans-Pecos and far west Texas roots. There's plenty to love about Desert Door. For me, it all starts right there. A close second is just how versatile Desert Door really is. You can go full highbrow and experiment with concocting a variety of cocktails that call for muddling fresh fruit, sprigs of thyme, sticks of cinnamon. It's perfect for that world. If you're a little bit more down home, if you've just rolled up the sleeves of your denim Wrangler button-up, it's perfect for that as well. If you're just desiring something that's short and sweet, it hits the mark every time. Desert Door is genuine and authentically West Texan. It's inherently West Texan. They harvest Sotol plants out in the wild and are knowledgeable conservationists at heart. That's obviously something incredibly important to me. They shine a light on what makes West Texas special and unique and worth preserving and keeping it safe from exploitation. Right now, you can find Desert Door all over Texas, Colorado, Tennessee, and there's budding numbers in places like New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Georgia. Best thing you can do is to check out desertdoor.com to find where Desert Door is locally. Again, that's desertdoor.com. If this is your first time listening to New Slang, be sure to hit that subscribe button. New Slang is available on a bevy of podcast places like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and so on. And of course, one of those 5-star reviews goes a long way, so take 2 seconds out of your day and leave a 5-star review. While you're at it, make a pit stop on over at the merch store. That is newslangpodcast.bigcartel.com. Over there, we have plenty of t-shirts, coffee mugs, shot glasses, stickers, and so on. And if you're wanting even more New Slang stuff, a great way to support this podcast, my 90s country podcast called The Neon Eon, and journalism in general, is by signing up for the Patreon. You can sign up for monthly merch packages, ad-free episodes, or be part of our postcard club for as little as $3 a month. And yeah, I just mentioned the Neon Eon. That is my 90s country podcast. It's interviews and conversations with and about songwriters, songs, artists, and albums and trends of the era. Which last week we had BJ Barham of American Aquarium on to talk about their surprise 90s country homage album, Slappers, Bangers, and Certified Twingers, Volume 1. Again, that's the Neon Eon. And the Neon Eon has a merch store as well. It's been ridiculously busy as of late. That's theneoneon.bigcartel.com. We're starting to run low on some of the shirts and koozies, so head on over there and place an order ASAP. And like New Slang, the Neon Eon is available everywhere podcasts are shared. All the links that I just mentioned, they will be in the show notes, which I think that's about it on the notes portion of the episode. Let's get on into it. Here is John R. Miller. I guess like where I want to start off with is that obviously you have this new record coming out this summer, and I guess what I've been talking with a lot of folks about how that's been affected by this past year, and if plans were put off or changed, or if this gap year, if you will, actually helped in the recording process because it gave you time to actually record. What's been the case with you and the new album?
Well, funnily enough, this one we actually we recorded last January of 2020. So we actually had it all kind of tracked and ready to go, like just before everything kind of shut down. And we were kind of wondering, what, like everybody else, kind of wondering what we were going to do with it, or if we were going to do anything with it, or if this was just it. So we kind of sat on it and ended up talking to some of the folks over at Rounder, and turned out they had some interest in putting the record out. So I think for the for this record, we ended up sitting on it for a long time before it's I guess it's coming out in July. So for this one, it may have actually sort of been to our benefit to just have something kind of in the bag, and that has also allowed me to sort of focus on getting back to writing and doing some other stuff in this time too. So just sort of the way it worked out.
Yeah, it feels like that's such a double-edged sword as far as, having something in the bag like that, something ready to go. Cause it, I like, musicians and, artists, as far as having something like that, sometimes it's like just burning a hole in the pocket.
Yeah. Or it feels like it can get spoiled,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me, everything sort of has like a sell by date.
No, exactly.
But I think everybody probably feels that way. Everybody kind of gets a little, tired of hearing their own stuff after a while. So.
Yeah, well, it's that whole thing where, you've even like in just like if we cut out, if you just or not even cut out, let's just like, if you add all the hours and the time spent with these songs, at the end of the day, that's like, shit, man, I've listened to this way more than anyone else could ever imagine. And, by the time it's even released, or even announced, you've been around these songs forever. And, that's where all I'm kind of already, I'm not over them, but I'm like over just having them sitting here. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. That's,
yeah, sure.
I feel like that's just, that I guess like that's necessary for artistry, because you're always kind of, needing to move on and find that next thing that moves you to put to paper or to, paint or whatever the case is. But, the I guess this past year has just been really difficult for that whole thing, the limbo, because it wasn't ever like at the very beginning of the quarantine, no one ever just said, hey, just put a pause for the next year. It was always like strung out like 6 weeks at a time.
Yep. Yeah, we were kind of just taking everything just a couple of days at a time, just like everybody else,
Yeah, well, so obviously you said you guys recorded back in January of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
At least, I guess like this past year gave you time to do all the stuff with the record, as far as taking the time to all the stuff that's quote unquote like the boring stuff, as far as mixing and mastering, and getting all the T's crossed, the I's dotted, and as you mentioned, reaching out to Rounder and finding that there was mutual interest between y'all. So as far as like that goes, like, do you think like this process has been easier, or do you feel like in the past it's been a little bit easier just because it's been probably a little bit more of a rapid pace to it, as far as all the stuff post recording?
Well, this actually, as far as the post production recording stuff goes, this is kind of the first time that I've ever done a record like with a producer, like in a studio. It's all been pretty DIY with friends and stuff like that in the past. And the technical aspects of the record itself got done pretty quickly once we were done tracking, within a few weeks. In the past, it's kind of been up to different schedules, or, whenever it's done, it's done. But this is the first time I've kind of done it this way. We've always sort of done it on our own, with most bands that I've been involved with too. So it's pretty exciting, but it's also once it was done was kind of when the waiting game started,
Right. And this time you guys recorded over at the Sound Emporium in Nashville, which I've seen like a quote that you described that I really, really loved. And that was like, that it has a lived in feeling. I feel like sometimes, like those places like that can have, a sterile kind of connotation, or feeling, but that lived in feeling is a nice way to describe a place.
Yeah, man, it's a super vibey room. I think it's been there. The Sound Emporium's been there since like the 1960s. It was a Cowboy Jack Clements studio. Super cool place, and we got to do it in Studio A there, which is just a really beautiful, like, kind of lots of wood paneling and old features that are still hanging around. It's got sort of a living room vibe, it's really nice. I mean, it sounds great in there too.
Yeah. Well, how has it been, this being like the first time working with some accomplished producers and in a space like that, as far as being able to explore that space? How long did you guys record in there? And like, was that like, did you guys try and keep it like in a week, or like, in a more of a smaller space of time, or was it kind of strung out over the course of a while, a day or two?
We did it pretty quick. Sort of, I kind of went in there with a budget that I'd saved up from just kind of touring on the road with people, and we had allocated 3 days. We did like a Monday through Wednesday, and did all the tracking in those days. So it was pretty quick. Unfortunately, I got to do it with my regular band for the most part. We played a lot over the last few years together, so it was pretty easy to kind of get in there and work it out. And Justin Francis, the engineer and part producer of the record, he's an old buddy that I've known for a really long time, and he's done like kind of mixing and mastering stuff for projects that I've done in the past. And the other guy kind of in the producing role is Adam Meisterhans, who I know from way back in West Virginia. We've played in bands together for many years, and he's kind of a guy down here now, and a really kind of in-demand guitar player. He's really great. So we kind of did one day of sort of like pre-production, like out at my house, which at the time was kind of out northwest of town in a little area called Bell's Bend. And then we just hit the ground running the next week in the studio.
Yeah, I always love when a record kind of comes that quickly, because like, you know, there's no wrong way to make a record, there's no right way to make a record, but I always love when it's in that, just trying to capture that time period where it's not going to try and be like where you're trying to make it absolutely, you know, pristine, shiny. This again, like this record right here, you feel like those songs have been around forever, and yet like the recording, it feels very much that same way, as far as like having where it's comfortable within itself, where it's not trying to be, you know, glossy or anything.
Yeah, I that was pretty intentional. I think we kind of all agreed that, you know, what we'd been sort of working towards over the past couple of years with the band was, we kind of wanted to be pretty truthful with our documentation of that. And, you know, we didn't tweak much before we went in there and did it. We were mostly ready to kind of do it the way we had been. And you know, after that, we did have a day of we had Robbie Crowell come in and play some keys. He did some whirly and some B3, and we got to have Russ Paul come in and do some pedal steel on a couple tracks, which we were very lucky to get both of them. And kind of those are the only overdubs that we really did after the fact. Everything else was tracked live, you know, vocals and all.
Right. Yeah. Like they really add it and provide like a lot of warmth that I feel on the record. This episode is brought to you by Wild Gallery. Based in Austin, Texas, Wild Gallery is Austin's only art gallery featuring Native American art. Head on over to wyld.gallery to see their vast array of traditional and contemporary art by Native American artists. Currently, they are a virtual gallery. You can still make appointments on their website if you're wanting to purchase a specific painting in person, but of course, the beauty of them being virtual is that you're able to see and buy from your home without trekking all the way to Austin. While New Slang definitely focuses on music, I always love speaking with songwriters about those other mediums that they explore. Often that's through painting and drawing, the visual arts. And since I'm a West Texas native, I've long been drawn to the history, the stories, traditions, and heritage of Native Americans, especially those that were out here in the Western frontier. And that is what's so great about Wild Gallery. All of the artists featured are Native American, and they are telling stories about Native Americans. If you scroll through their collection, you'll see a wide range of styles as well. There's definitely some American West and some bold pop art. There's more of that traditional fine art like oil on canvas, as well as those that are influenced by Native American traditions. My parents, they always had paintings hanging around the house or their offices that were inspired by West Texas and Native Americans. And now I do as well, especially here in my office, which I'll let you guess where the latest print is from. As a journalist, I do feel like the most intimidating part is staring at a blank white page. And of course, you don't have to be a journalist to be staring at a white blank page. I know a lot of y'all do that. What I'm saying though is, don't let your walls suffer from that same white blandness. Go visit Wild Gallery. I guarantee you will find something that moves you and that you'll want hanging in your home. Again, that's Wild with a Y. Go visit wyld.gallery. Links will be in the show notes as well. Okay, let's get back to the episode. I'm always interested in how, take me, I guess, like through the process of how you went from whatever the number of songs was between that potentially could have been on this record to what ended up on the album. What was that process like as far as figuring out what those puzzle pieces were?
Well, there were only we ended up only tracking 12 and boiled it down to 11. I think I think that was kind of what we were ready with. There's a couple of songs on there that are actually a little older that had kind of been reworked, uh, and the rest of them are pretty new. But it's mostly just what we had been doing over the last couple of years on the road, and I hadn't really been writing at a super fast clip the past few years. Just kind of let it get away from me for a little bit, and so it was kind of, well, this is what I got, so let's do these. you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you feel like you wrote a bunch when you were younger, and that like I guess like maybe you pick and choose a little bit more, or what's that about as far as not writing at the same clip?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think that my inner editor has gotten a little more, a little better at his job, but I don't know. I think just sort of life shifting around and everything. I had I couldn't always find good times to write, and it wasn't until even the last like 6 months that I really got back to writing a lot again. But yeah, when I was younger, I'd kind of just write all the time and throw anything at the wall, and then most of it wouldn't stick, and then looking back, some of it probably shouldn't have, but it's I think that's where the editor comes in. You kind of hope that you refine that over the years, but I also appreciate when people just do the Dylan thing and just let's do it, put it out and move on.
Yeah, that's I think like every kind of young songwriter is that period of time where it's like just like the piss and vinegar kind of stage. The old joke, like there's a song in there somewhere kind of thing, and a young songwriter will find a song in there. So like it doesn't even like sometimes I think like and I mean that's perfectly fine. Some great stuff's been written just by the practice, if you will, if you just writing to write. But
yeah, I think you get better stuff the more you write. It really isn't. I've started to believe that it really kind of is quality or quantity over quality. Not in what you put out, but in what you end up with. I think you end up with a lot more stuff that you end up enjoying or feeling good about. Just the more that you do it. So, trying to get up every day and chip away at it is kind of the approach now. But it is you never really know what you're going to get necessarily.
right. I guess like just having the the what am I looking for here? The I'm blanking on what I'm trying to say. I know what you're saying as far as like, just doing it every day. Cause like sometimes like just kind of, allowing yourself to be in the moment where if something comes across,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I
the
think,
discipline of it, I guess.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. And I think I think you got to be willing to write bad stuff. I think it's kind of necessary. You gotta kind of write bad stuff before you get around to stuff that you can stand behind.
Yeah, I think like that happens a lot when you're kind of you mentioned like sometimes hopefully like your inner editor knows what's right, what's best, what's better, all that kind of stuff. But you also have to have that allowance of like allowing yourself to say something stupid, because it may end up getting you to a point of like there being a little bit of a nugget in there somewhere that ends up being something great.
Yeah, it's it's just sifting. You gotta dip it in, throw everything in the sieve,
Yeah. Panning for gold.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, I guess like one of my favorite things about songwriting and listening to music has always been just how artists like capture these little regions of America or the world really. But specifically with American music, American songwriters, what I love so much is the idioms or the expressions that people use that just kind of capture that county that they're from or that region. And there's something really, really cool about how even someone from, you're from West Virginia, I'm from, Texas, where that's, states apart, different kind of landscapes, but how like even just an expression that I maybe not be familiar with will transcend the space, and you're able to like, I guess, perfectly capture it, and other people are able to fully understand it. What's it? Is that like an aspect of your songwriting that you feel like you've done a great job of, as far as like capturing, life in the Panhandle of West Virginia?
Well, I don't know if it's ever really been a very intentional thing, and I hope that I haven't been disingenuous about that. That can be sort of a complicated thing. I don't know that I would really claim to represent any sort of place in any sort of way, but I feel like more so like I've been kind of traveling more often than not the last 10 years or so, maybe a little more. And so I almost kind of feel sort of like I've been untethered to any sort of particular place to even be able to sort of write from. But I hope that if somebody sort of reads into it and can sort of put themselves in that place, that it comes across as genuine, because just try to do that.
Right. I think like a lot of times it does take that getting away from some place to actually kind of examine it properly. I guess like there's two routes you could really do is that songwriter who's never really left home, and some, I guess maybe like in the like the William Faulkner kind of way of like just never leaving the South.
Yeah.
And finding the root, the truth of what the South was, of his specific little pocket and his his county, if you will. But then also there's something to the traveler who kind of realizes that life is very, very special and specific because he's gotten away.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think for me, I probably write more about home when I'm not there, and then I write probably more about traveling when I'm back home. Or gain inspiration from those experiences. I've been down in the Nashville area for like the past 3 or 4 years, and I feel like since I've been down here, I've been writing more about home than I ever have before. Especially this last year, I haven't really gotten to go up there very much, so it's on my mind a lot.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has long been the heart and soul of the Lubbock singer-songwriter scene and has been a home away from home for some of Texas, Americana, country, and rock and roll's finest over the years. Talk with 99.9% of the songwriters who have come out of Lubbock and the Panhandle at large over the past 20 years, and they'll point to just how integral and necessary the Blue Light is. With live music and touring slowly but surely coming back, spots like the Blue Light are getting back to their usual ways as well. That means music every night of the week. Do you want to see that schedule? Well, I've got a few options for you. 1, go to their socials and give them a follow. That is at Blue Light Live on Twitter, at The Blue Light Live on Instagram, and of course by just searching the Blue Light Live on Facebook. They're consistently posting that week's lineup of shows, as well as those heavy hitters that ought to be on your calendar that are coming up on the horizon. 2, check out bluelightlubbock.com as well. There they have the full schedule, the cover charges, time, any of those specials that may be happening. While there, go check out their merch page. They have a wide range of hats, koozies, hoodies, sweaters, beanies, jackets, and so much more. You can, of course, get all of your merch needs when you go see your favorite band take the stage at Blue Light. Just ask the bartender and they will get you all set. Speaking of which, that's another great way of seeing who's playing there. Just go to the Blue Light. It's at 1806 Buddy Holly Avenue here in Lubbock, Texas. And of course, again, that is bluelightlubbock.com. I'll throw a link into the show notes too. Maybe I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the show. Yeah, like it's I don't know, for me, so like I'm from a small town in West Texas, and growing up there, like I always just kind of didn't want to be there, and
Yeah.
it took like getting out, and of course, like I live in West Texas essentially still, but still like you start realizing like all the little things that make it specific and special, and maybe not even special in a good way, just special and unique because it's different.
Yeah. And I think that kind of perspective can really lend itself well to writing, and the way that you can look at a place. I was kind of growing up in the Panhandle and living in a small town. I was really was just kind of desperate to get out. I think that's sort of a common theme with a lot of kids. It's it's not until you really get away from a place that you can sort of look at it and appreciate it, I guess, more objectively.
Yeah, there's I guess like the punk band Titus Andronicus.
Yeah.
One of my favorite records is The Monitor that they released, I don't know, probably like 10 years ago now at least. But there's a song on there called, I guess I'm blanking on the name. It's like A More Perfect Union, where kind of like the whole thing is like trying to get out of New Jersey, and like the parallels between that and, of course, like that whole record's kind of about the Civil War and stuff. But basically, the whole point of like that song is like how you're trying to work to get out of wherever you're from. And in his case, in New Jersey, you go to this like place that you think is going to be special and different, and then you realize like you have the same problems, and it's the same place. It's the same places you've ever been. And I think there's something to that too.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. It's you're always kind of looking for something out there, especially when you're trying to write and stuff. I feel like you're always kind of like, well, if I could just like have this new experience or this new experience, I might find something something more profound in it or something like that. But, then you get out there and you're like, well, let's see. I got bars here too,
Yeah. I don't know, like I always have like this complicated relationship as far as with West Texas, and that maybe you are feeling the same thing as far as I guess like maybe like the romanticism. Like sometimes like I think people romanticize or like romanticize West Texas to the point where it's not even real. Do you feel like the same kind of thing where like maybe they gloss over like the actual like real problems, or they kind of like sweep the the folks who live there that are like working class under the rug? Do you feel like the same kind of like complications with like Appalachia?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been maybe even more so the last handful of years. There's it can always sort of get a complicated perspective from other folks. It's an easy thing to romanticize too. There's a lot of beauty out there, and it feels there's a certain romanticized independence, I think, that is easy to feel when you think about those places. And I do too, a lot of the time. But it's a very complicated place, and it's not as kind of, I don't know, just binary as people maybe often imagine it to be. And it's anytime you have an idea of what a place is like in your head, it's never quite as accurate as when you get there and talk to people and start to understand it from a different perspective. But there are a lot of different kinds of folks doing different kinds of things in West Virginia and Appalachia that I think, especially in media and everything, kind of get glossed over. And it's not just one thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, the way like I compare, what I always think about is like I don't know if you're familiar with Marfa, Texas, or like the Prada Marfa.
Yeah, I've been to Marfa.
Yeah, okay. So like the Prada Marfa is of course like this really great, and I say great in quotes, like art installation out in the middle of nowhere, and a spot for Instagram photos, and it's always like just like I guess like fundamentally there's nothing wrong with it, and like it doesn't really bother me that much, but it's always like that's just like a photo that doesn't really capture like what that part of West Texas is actually like, and yet I think like some people think that represents the quirkiness of West Texas or something, or of Marfa. And it's like, well, there's probably a lot more people out here digging ditches and post holes, like putting up fence than Instagram influencers and shit. And I'm assuming like there's got to be the same parallels for something that's going on up there, as far as just where I guess the average person in pop culture just has like a little Polaroid shot of what West Virginia is, or of Appalachia, yet there's like they're missing all the stuff on the outside of that photo.
Yeah, very, very much so. And that's probably, like you're saying, it's probably the same just about anywhere. We all get kind of a strange sort of tunnel view of things through any form of media or social media. But it's hard to it's hard for me to really think about what folks who haven't spent a lot of time there might think about or imagine it to be in West Virginia. Because when I think about it, it's a pretty complicated place with a lot of beauty and a lot of hardship, and a lot of great music and a lot of really great art and writers, and just it's definitely got its own personality and its own troubles.
Right. You mentioned the other songwriters and the other artists from that area. Obviously, like, it feels like right now that there's a lot of really great songwriters who are being discovered from, the Kentuckys, the West Virginias, and just that entire region. Obviously there's been great songwriters who have been coming out of there forever, but it feels like this past decade, there's maybe we're seeing a highlight reel, if you will, or a golden era, a second golden era or something like that. I guess like here in Texas, maybe this is only a Texan thing because people from Texas are always going to be, that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth. So they're proud of every songwriter from Texas. But is
Sure.
there that same kind of feeling as far as like, are people, just the average person, are they aware of like, all the great art, if you will, that's coming out of the area?
I'm not too sure about the average person's perception of what's going on. I feel like I've kind of been living in a bubble for for most of my life, so I see all this stuff happening, and it's definitely, Texas has a long, rich, kind of established, very proud history of its songwriters and its artists and its writers, and there is definitely some of that in West Virginia too. But a lot of the time it does kind of feel like we're sort of looking out for ourselves, and trying to look out for each other, kind of within that bubble. It's like, it feels a lot more like we kind of are we're not trying to, but we are sort of flying under the radar. I'm not sure how aware, the average person, or even what that means, might be aware of all the stuff going on, because it's there definitely doesn't seem to be as established of an infrastructure there as there are in a lot of other places for I guess kind of getting attention in that way, or presenting your creativity.
Right.
There aren't really like a whole lot of really established avenues to do that. So we all, we growing up, we kind of assumed that was a given, and we just have always been kind of pretty DIY about it.
Right. Yeah. Like I think a lot of folks take the infrastructure down here for granted, because, there's, every town has a place to play, and, it's all like it took time for there to be, where even bars and venues down here in Texas went, hey, we should have an in-house engineer and sound guy and sound and all that kind of stuff. And that takes time, where, that's the leg that Texas right now has up on most places in the country, because, you can go play music, but it wasn't necessarily like that all the time. And that's one of those things I guess I always fear too, is like that bubble that you mentioned. Like if this is just the, not necessarily fear, but you know what I'm saying, as far as, am I out of touch? That kind of aspect, because I guess we're like all kind of living in our own little, echo chamber in some respects.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of the way it is these days anyhow. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of people who are working towards that kind of thing. There's a lot of, there are quite a few people around West Virginia who have, opened venues and, tried to get things going and do it right. And some of it, has really been working. And I hope that most everybody has managed to kind of make it through this past year, but it kind of, sort of threw everything into uncertainty. And like I said, I haven't really been there very much recently. But there are a lot of people working to kind of create that network and maintain it, and connect people with each other who are trying to share their art or whatever they're working on. And there is a community, under the radar as it may be, of people and a lot of mutual respect there and everything. It's pretty small and kind of grassroots, if you will.
I want to break one more time to talk about our pals over at Desert Door and offer up a quick Thomas Mooney's cocktail minute. As I've said probably 100 times by now, by no means am I a seasoned mixologist or bartender, but these have been some of my Desert Door go-tos. For starters, let's just go with the tried and true ranch water. Pop the top off the Topo Chico, take a good swig, now pour in some Desert Door, and top it off by throwing in a few lime wedges. Never fails. This one, it's so simple it probably doesn't even count, but again, pretty foolproof. Do the exact same thing, but get you a Mexican Coca-Cola. I guess you can go with a regular one, but you're really cutting yourself short if you don't opt for the Mexican import variety. All right, here's the change-up you've been waiting for. Desert Door Sangria. This one is prime for when you have company coming over and you aren't wanting to just be over there making 6 different drinks at a time. What you'll need is some Desert Door, obviously, a bottle of red wine, honey, boiling water, apple cider vinegar, some cinnamon sticks, a couple of apples, and some thyme sprigs. I know, that may sound intimidating, but trust me, it's worth the prep, and honestly, it's pretty easy. For starters, get you a punch bowl, add that honey, those cinnamon sticks, and the boiling water together. Now you're going to want to stir that all up and let it cool down for about an hour or so. Remember, patience is a virtue. Once that's done, add some Desert Door and stir vigorously. Now add the wine, the cider, and the vinegar, and continue stirring until it's equally mixed. Now slice those apples up and toss them in. Put in those thyme sprigs as well. Now you can pour that over some ice and you have a mighty fine sangria. Chef's kiss. Anyway, those have been some of my favorite go-tos as of late. And remember, Desert Door is as versatile as vodka and more refined, smooth, complex, and intriguing than tequila. It's rich and balanced, and whether you decide to keep it simple or want to experiment, Desert Door is that perfect Texas spirit. There's plenty more recipes over at desertdoor.com as well. Check out the show notes for a link. All right, let's get back to the episode. This record right here that you're releasing in the summer, you've released a couple of singles already. By the time this episode is out, you'll have the third one out. And I was wanting to know, like, as far as Shenandoah Shakedown goes, what take me back to like writing that song. Do you remember like what it was that kind of sparked that idea?
Yeah, it was a few years ago. It was kind of after I had, I used to live in Shepherdstown, which is a pretty small town that runs along the Potomac River. It's really close to Harper's Ferry, which is where the confluence of the Shenandoah River and the Potomac are. And um, I lived there for about 10 years before I moved down here, and it was basically my whole 20s, and I I spent a lot of time um, on and around the river. It seemed like that was kind of the biggest, at least for me, that was kind of the biggest presence there. I really was kind of a river rat, for lack of a better term, you know. But also, I was sort of trying to, I guess it sort of worked out in sort of vignette form in the song, but I was sort of just trying to capture little fragments of um, sort of the I guess the time spent there, and also kind of frame it around the dissolution of a long term relationship that ended up kind of, you know, leaving me kind of having to leave, and you know, or just I guess I had wanted to leave for a while, um, in a way, to sort of that I gotta try something else out kind of thing. And when I sort of uh, didn't really have much of a reason to stay anymore, I finally kind of stumbled down here, and you know, it's the next place where I kind of knew the most couches to sleep on. And that song was just sort of I don't know. It was sort of a way to process some of those memories. I guess in a way, and ended up being sort of a pretty personal song that ended up making it to the record. So
Yeah, that's obviously like I think like people love the personal intimate storytelling of an artist. But I guess like there's always that balance of, um or I maybe like maybe even fear of like, sharing stuff that maybe that you feel is too personal or like too close to the truth, you know. Um and I guess like mixing and balancing that with, character sketches and vignettes of, folks that you've run across. What have you ever like has how has that been as far as an artist? Have you ever felt like something's too personal to share with the outside world?
um, no, not really. I mean, kind of. I guess songwriting is sort of how I process things. Um, so I mean, certainly there have been songs that I've written I might feel like it's just a little too, feels a little too vulnerable or something to me, and maybe that goes into the pile. But you know, I think first and foremost, I kind of started writing songs for that reason, and just to sort of process things that would happen around me, or things that I was feeling. And it is still that way, sometimes, but sort of I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like songwriting or just expression is like the truest form of kind of like some kind of therapy at the end of the day,
Yeah.
even like obviously just consuming art. I think like sometimes we think of like, older generations, especially with men as like not or being like anti-therapy or something like that, but it's like, man, even these hardened older guys, they were listening to music, and they, like that was like a form of therapy, and I think like there's something to that as far as writing down what you're feeling, it makes things better. So, I mean, I get that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It works and it's free. So,
Yeah. um, Going back to like the writing process, like what, you mentioned this pile, maybe it goes into that pile of stuff that's discarded or, put away. Do you ever go back and like go through songs that, scraps, I guess, if you will, or stuff that you've just kind of put away and try to like polish them or try and do anything or even just steal from them, if you will? I know it's not stealing necessarily, but, plucking the good stuff.
yeah, definitely do some cherry picking sometimes. I've got like a pretty big pile of sort of just junk, and I kind of separate that from the pile of stuff that I feel is like, maybe close to something, and sometimes I'll pretty rarely go back and like try to pick something that I've essentially discarded and try to turn it into something. But I tend to keep it just because there's often I'll like just I'll need to kind of look elsewhere for just like one missing piece of something, and sometimes I'll find that in something else that never really made it out.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's worth keeping stuff just for that. As kind of a scrap pile, just spare parts.
Yeah. I think like most of the songwriters I know are pack rats at the end of the day when it comes to lost words and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to. If you got a few good tires, you don't want to throw away the whole thing.
Yeah. You mentioned how the past 6 months or so have been a lot better creatively for you as far as writing new stuff. Has that come with obviously where for so long you've been out on the road where this has just been a moment of, you know, being a little bit more being idle, if you will, being in a space where you're even just allowed to have some space to write, some time. Do you think like that's the biggest thing, been the biggest thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I I think finally kind of, it's sort of been a mixed blessing. I think finally getting to be stationary for so long, sort of gave me the mental space to really like maybe process a lot of stuff. And I don't know, I started trying to get into a better routine with it, and getting up early and just trying to kind of knock it out like first thing every day. I'll try to sit down and just work on some stuff. And if I'm just banging my head against the wall, I'll usually just move on to some other stuff. But for the most part, like having the space to kind of do that has been pretty fruitful. And I can never really do that when I was traveling a lot. It's sometimes you can sort of come up with something in the middle of doing who knows what, and then you're like, oh, I gotta work this thing out. But for the most part, I feel like the older I get, the more intentional I have to be about it. And the more time I have to kind of give to it if it's going to give anything back to me.
Yeah. I think that like I'm just a world class procrastinator, and I feel like there's plenty of stuff that I need to get done or need to work on, and I'll just put it off and put it off. But usually, I've had to just like you just have to make yourself do it, and within those first 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, you kind of forget like that's always the hardest part is just getting started. And so like,
oh yeah,
having the discipline, the routine enough to get past that initial part of starting is what I feel is like the key for it all.
Yeah, that is the hardest part for me too. And procrastinating is like the easiest and the hardest thing to do all at the same time. You can't really shake the feeling that you should be doing it, but just sitting down and doing it sounds like you're trying to climb a mountain or something. But I guess like anytime you try to do that, it's just sort of one step at a time. It's hard to. It's if you're trying to think about sitting down and I'm going to write this whole thing right now. It's a lot harder to get started than just like, I think I'm just going to sit down and like sit here with a piece of paper and a pen for a little while, and just one. It's a very incremental process for me these days.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to allowing yourself to not necessarily think that the first thing that you're going to write down is going to be prolific and perfect. Because like I always get that stuck in my head too whenever I'm writing about another artist or writing something, is allowing myself to have like the mistakes in there, or like even just make it as simple as possible, and then going back and like given all the flowery aspects of it, of the writing.
Yeah,
I'm also like the king of doing the, well, it's 12:10. I can't start like right now. Let me go ahead and do the at 1:00.
Yeah, or like I can only do this if I have like a whole hour ahead of me, and then you have like an excuse not to do it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm only going to sit down to write if I've got 3 hours in which to do it, and I can just really get in there and then you're like, well, I guess I didn't find 3 hours today. Oops,
Yeah.
But if you find 5 or 10 minutes, I think that's good too.
Yeah. What's kind of like your, if all conditions are kind of like perfect, do you have like a certain kind of like setup, cup of coffee, anything like that? What's kind of like your go-to?
Oh yeah, like more like 3 or 4 cups of coffee probably, and usually smoke some weed and just kind of sit there for a while, and maybe I'll make some breakfast if I'm really having a hard time. But if I can really get going on something, I'll sit there for 2 hours, just get to work. But the foundational aspects of the coffee and sitting there and getting sort of early morning stoned, those things I find it's helpful to have a routine, sort of I guess a ritual, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. For me, it's always the cup of coffee. It's always the just kind of, getting a couple things set on my desk, having like a notepad, and then also having like my Word doc up or whatever the case. Because I always feel, and this goes back to the whole like never erasing kind of stuff, or like keeping the scraps, because if I erase it, I'll for some reason, like there'll be something in me going, oh shit, I can't remember exactly how that was supposed to be said or how I wanted to say it. So, having the scrap paper there is always necessary, but for me at least.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. Good, man.
Yeah, well, it's been really, really great talking with you today. I really love this new record, and hopefully you'll get down here to Texas sometime and be able to catch a show.
Yeah. It's been great talking to you as well, and hopefully we'll be getting down there sooner than later once we can kind of get wheels back on the road. Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right, that is it for 173. Thanks for listening. Be sure to mark those calendars for July 16th. That's when Depreciated, the new record by John R. Miller, is officially out. Stop on over and visit our presenting partners, Desert Door, Wild Gallery, and the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Hit up the New Slang merch store and be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. We have a quick turnaround on episode 174. It's with Texas songwriter Summer Dean and will be out by this Friday.